It is so exciting to live in a time where we have access to so much information, where we can think of a question that we have and go find the answer out there on our phones. And one thing that we can do now, because there's so much information out there, is to use labels to understand ourselves better, the people in our life better, and our relationships better. But sometimes the labeling process can get in our way. So I want to talk about sort of the good, the bad, and the ugly of labels today. I'm Stacy Rocklein, and I'm on a mission to eradicate loneliness. And loneliness can be something that is a result of labels and how we use them. And they can also be used for our benefit if they inform what we should do in our relationships. So let's talk about the good part, right? Let's say that you're struggling in a relationship and someone says, hey, you should look up codependence. And so you look up codependence and you just start reading all of this information about it, and it starts to make you feel validated, right? It makes you feel like you're not crazy. It makes you feel like you're not alone. There are other people out in the world experiencing this, and that part is amazing. That's such a great way to feel that you're a part of a community of people who have this challenge. You know, it has happened with attachment theory and narcissism, and it's important for us to feel seen and for us to feel like we're normal. So that's the great part. You know, I have loved when I have found a label that I've applied to myself or applied to someone in my life, even though I'm sure I'm not supposed to be doing that, that helps me understand myself and understand someone else. So that part's amazing. That's the good. How about the bad? What can also happen if you're anything like me is all of a sudden I become obsessed with the idea and I fall down a rabbit hole where I can get stuck just compiling more and more information. So now I know something and I'm, taking in a lot more information, but this isn't changing any of my circumstance. So it's starting to actually get in my way a little bit. Or another way it can get in your way is if you start to make excuses because of it. Like if I just start going like, oh, well, it's because I'm an Enneagram 3 that I do that really unhealthy thing. And I don't use it as a call to challenge myself on that behavior. So it can sort of take a little bit of a turn also, the ugly part. And that is when it really starts to wind us up. Like here's an example. I'm reading an amazing book right now about toxic parents. And it's so awesome because it's just giving me all kinds of more information to help my clients. Now, that I'm going to use as a benefit, but sometimes you pick up a book like that. Let's say if someone picks it up for a personal reason and they start reading about toxic parents and it just winds them up and they get more and more upset and more angry about the situation that there's been in, which would be totally normal. Sometimes a label does make us angry. It makes us feel some really unpleasant things. In our relationships, though, that can do is it can start to create separation between us and another person. The more, where we're like, oh, my ex is a narcissist. And then we're like, and they did this. And all of a sudden we stop using it as a way to help and we start to use it as a way to create more separation between the person if they're still in our lives, or to close our hearts. And when we use it against ourselves, let's say that we have labeled ourselves in some way. And, I'm reading this book about toxic parents, and every once in a while I come upon a behavior and I'm like, oh my God, I think I've done that before, right? I can really spiral myself into shame if I turn this label against myself and I start to abuse myself with it. So it can turn a corner for us. And I think that and all of this is normal. We've all used it in a good way. We've all used it in a little bit of a bad way. We've all been in that ugly spot with labels. And that can be against ourselves, or like I said, when we're out labeling the people in our life now or who have been in our lives. So I think the important thing is to find this sweet spot where you kind of hit the point where you have enough information to inform you on how to act. That's the benefit, right? And it's going to be different for every person. It's going to be different for different moments in your life, for different labels. But you get the aha where you're like, oh my gosh, this is totally telling me so much about this situation. Now I understand it in a whole different way. I want to learn a little bit more about it, so you do that. But when you hit a point where you can kind of feel that turn where it's going to start to negatively affect how you feel or your relationships, then it's time to ask yourself, what action can I take? Now, if we are labeling the people in our lives, we can't go expect them to change all of their behaviors because we found out information about them. They might be willing to do that. That's amazing. But we can always do something for ourselves. We can always pick an action that we can take. So you don't have to go become an expert on a label. You don't have to be like, I'm now the OCD expert and I've watched, hours and hours and hours, hundreds of hours of TikToks about it and read so many different posts. And you don't have to do that. You take the information that you've got and you're going to use it for yourself. So like, here are some examples. I am not an expert by any stretch on attachment theory, right? For me, what's important is I know that I've got avoidant attachment tendencies. So that gives me enough information to know how I'm going to show up in some of my relationships when I feel triggered, that I'm going to pull away, that I'm going to withdraw, that I'm going to turn away from someone who may need me, right? So it tells me enough about myself to tell me what to do differently if I want to begin to correct this limiting thing about myself. Let's say you knew you were, anxious attachment, and what that tells you for yourself, this is just an example, is that you need to work on soothing your own nervous system internally and work on getting yourself grounded. So it's all helpful. I mentioned Enneagram 3, right? I loved learning that about myself. It was so much good information. It's been great information knowing that about my family, the different Enneagram numbers they are. I'm not a certified Enneagram coach, but it still gives me enough information to give people grace when they're behaving a certain way. And for me to challenge myself on certain things when I see that I have unhealthy behaviors. So we can use them to our advantage, but we have to keep them from getting us stuck at the best scenario, or worse, really disrupting the way we feel about the people in our lives or ourselves and creating difficulties in our relationship. So go out there and learn about yourself. That's amazing. Learn enough that you understand yourself pretty well, and then watch for that little point when it's time to stop scrolling and start asking yourself the question, what is the action I can take so that I can create the healthiest environment for me and for me in my relationships and for the people that I love? Now, what you can do right now as far as taking action is to make sure you subscribe to this channel, like this video. That is how the reach of this information is expanded according to YouTube. So it's beneficial for me and for anybody who needs help with this. And I appreciate so much that you do that. Okay, good luck with your labels. Use them to your advantage. Go out and have powerful, wonderful, closely connected relationships. See you next time.